Alright, hello. This is a tutorial for how to use OBS Studios. This right here is OBS Studios. As you can see, it says 21.10. We could look it up, but I'm pretty sure it's the newest version. It's actually not the newest version. Okay. Doesn't matter though, they haven't changed anything recently, so this is OBS, right? You wanna stream or record your videos for stuff. You wanna figure out how, and I'm gonna show you. So, basically, you wanna first figure out what you wanna record, right? So let's say you wanna record just your screen, right? Like I am right now. Then it's pretty easy. Well, first, you should figure out your computer's performance. There's multiple ways to do that. One quick way that I usually do is just check Task Manager and go to Performance. And then you can see your stuff, basically. And see how much is being used, how much you actually have. You can see it here. Oh my god, my memory got halved for some reason. Oh wait, no, never mind. It just shows available, like out of the 8 that I have, it's 4.9. Okay, well, so if you can run your games at, like, let's say you have your game at graphic setting middle, like, you know, like mid-tier, the settings in like the mid-tier state, at 60 FPS, then you want to crank this down already, unless, like, okay, so there's two priorities that one could have. One is looks. So if you want your game to look great, then your priority is obviously look, and the other is performance. Now this varies from game to game. Some games you don't care about performance because it's not a game where you can do a lot of things wrong if you don't have, say, the skill of a gamer, you know? Other games you don't care about looks because the game is mainly based around how well you're doing, right? Say you want to stream it on Twitch or something, and it's a game that the community is very focused on performance rather than how it looks like, because they all know how it looks like. So they want someone who's good, right? And you can only be good at these games if you have a good performance. So those are priorities. It's like a spectrum that you have to figure out how much do you care about either and find a good middle ground. Also, if you're gonna do something else than just streaming the game, like say you want to have your chat open, so you need a browser like Chrome with a tab that has your chat, which will look something like this. So this is my chat, right? Just gonna pull it up. And then say you have two monitors, right? So you put this on one monitor, and then you have your chat there, so you can see what people type. If you stream, like if you do, then you wanna probably have this open. So Chrome uses up some RAM and CPU usage. So let's say you care about looks, but you also want multitasking while still playing the game, like having music, opening Chrome, watching YouTube videos, whatever. So if you want all of that, you have to go even further into performance, not only because of the game performance, but also like how much you want to do at the same time, right? Okay, if you're done with deciding that, and that's also a progress that you're gonna have to kind of just figure out for yourself, because surely there's math to do all of this, but I think it's way easier to just trial and error your way to victory with a few tips that I'm gonna give you. So if you figured out all of that, I'm gonna call this multitasking. So yeah, let's say you start OBS for the first time after you download it, and you have no clue what to do. It looks sort of similar, not the same, obviously. It's gonna have this preview window as well, which you're gonna have by default. So let's say you just really do not know. This is gonna be black, by the way, or gray, and you just don't know what to do. So you see all of these, like the sources, the scenes, the mixer and shit. Right, so what you first want to do is leave all of this alone and go to settings, because this is where most of the important stuff happens. I recommend using dark mode, because why not? Like, dark mode is just better. There's a few things you may want to just read through and decide if you want to use it or not. Like, I recommend turning this on for now, because one thing that's very hard for beginners as well is if you have a window like this, right, and you want to drag it to the edge so that it snaps there. If you turn off snapping, it's gonna be like 1 pixel too much, or there's gonna be a black line of like 1 pixel. But with snapping, it just snaps to the edge like this, and you don't have to worry about it. So yeah, that's a thing you can do. Otherwise, in the general tab right here, there's not much you need to enable and stuff. Like, you could leave all of this off and it would be fine. Now, if you want to stream, then this is probably an important tab. Under streaming services, you want to choose your platform, and then you want to go to your Twitch, and then you go, let it load, please, thanks. Okay, so if you go to settings, wait, no, not settings, sorry. If you go to the dashboard, the creator dashboard right here, you'll be able to, if you open this window, if you go to Stream Manager, oh wait, no, sorry. I think it's under preference. They change it up so often, it's annoying. Yeah, it's under channel right here. This is the URL. I'm gonna put it in the description as well. Dashboard.twitch/u, because your username is there. And settings and channel. And then here you have your streaming key, which you don't want to share with anyone unless you trust them to like not do shit with it. But yeah, you can copy this. You can click on show to see it. You can also reset it. If it didn't work, just reset it. And yeah, you want to go to OBS and just copy paste it here. And usually you want to leave it on auto recommended. It'll choose the closest server to you, but if you live in some weird location where there's no server nearby, then you may want to pick one that you know is the closest. Or like, you can research that to find out which one's the closest. So yeah, that's the streaming tab. Then the output tab, which is a really important one for a lot of reasons, has by default looks a little different. So usually it says standard or like normal here or simple, and it'll show you stuff that is very simplified to change all your settings. What you want to do is put it on advanced, because that's what you need basically. So there's multiple tabs for multiple options. I recommend using streaming and recording separately, because I noticed that if you stream, you automatically need more performance stuff than if you record, because if you record, you mainly do nothing else. But if you stream, you want to multitask at least a little bit. So yeah, for streaming, I recommend putting enforce streaming service encoder here, and you want to make sure it's X264, unless you have a CPU with at least 4 cores and 16 threads. If you have more, then just put it on NVENC, which is the other option. Rescale resolution I would just not use at all. CBR for the rate control. Now the bit rate, which is really important. Let's go back to this. So the bit rate is gonna decide how well your game looks like on the recording or on the stream in terms of how pixelated it is. So the bitrate controls how many bits per second it shows on your recording, or how many it uses. So the more bits, the better it looks, right? I use 800 for streaming because my PC is really bad. So 800 is enough to make it look okay, but still be able to perform in-game stuff. If you have a better PC, say, okay, let's go to the spec, right? If the game you're playing, you get 60 FPS on mid-tier, you want to probably turn this down a little bit. If it's a game where you need performance, like turn those to mostly lower resolutions. Turn off stuff like VSync, but you should have that off by default anyway. Turn off anti-aliasing and shit like that. You don't really need it. Doesn't change that much. And then you can use a bitrate that is around 2500. Say, yeah. So you turn this down, you can probably use 2500 and be fine. If you notice that you hit a recording at the end of this and it's really laggy, you may want to turn this down. I recommend not going below 1000 or 1200 if you do care about how like pixelated it is. Like you want to be able to see chat, like text messages on your stream, then you probably want to leave this at a higher number. Now for interval, it depends a lot on what kind of content you're showing. If you're browsing the web, for example, I want to say that 10 is a good number. It's kind of complicated to explain what this does, but basically the higher the number, the less often it refreshes the keyframe of your streaming video. So say that I move this window from here to here in the course of 2 seconds, and say I put an interval of 2, then it's gonna update, you can see here, seconds and then the key interval. So per second, it's gonna update a keyframe twice. So in 2 seconds, it's gonna update all of the information in this screen twice to a keyframe. It doesn't mean that I get 2 FPS, that's not what it means. It just means that most of the information in this picture, like the order of where everything is going to be saved in 2 instances. If you put it on 1, which I usually do, then it's going to be once a second, because once a second is just very accurate and like very stable. You can make this higher. Like, I don't recommend going above 60 if you're recording at 60 FPS. If you record at 30 FPS, I don't recommend going higher than 30. I use 1 because I don't need a higher one. If you notice weird glitchy imagery, then just make it lower. So now the CPU usage preset means that if you go to ultra fast, it's gonna use less of your CPU to render your stream. And if you go to placebo, whatever, or very slow, it's gonna use more of your CPU to render the stream. So depending on how fast your CPU is, and depending on how much of the CPU you want to use for other stuff. So say, let's look at mine, right? It says 32% usage, and I'm only looking at my desktop right now. So that's already pretty high of a usage. I don't want to use a lot of CPU for this alone, because if I do anything else, it's gonna use up almost everything of my CPU, which means it's gonna get hot, and a hot CPU is gonna, like, you know, be very loud because of the cooling. So depending on what kind of CPU you have, you can choose less usage or more usage. Then profile, I recommend just using baseline. You can use high if you have like a high-end PC or whatever, but baseline is perfectly fine. I would leave this alone. I figured to do some stuff with this or this, but I don't really think it's that useful. I would just use it on none because it doesn't really make a difference. So if you're done with that for streaming, then I recommend using the recording tab to measure your recording settings. I recommend putting in a custom thing here, which is basically just a place where it saves the videos. For me, that's here. So I just put this and I copied it there, right? You can use any folder if you want. It'll just save the video. I recommend using MP4. By default, it's something else, so make sure this is set to MP4. Then one audio track is enough, usually. Unless you have like multiple instances of microphones and stuff, then you want to use multiple. For encoding, make sure it's X264. Rescale output, I would not touch at all, but that's also to do with where is it? Oh, we're gonna get to that on video, but basically, if you rescale the resolution and you use a certain filter, it's gonna look bad. So just leave this off. Ignore this. It's just a warning that if you hit recording and you record stuff and then you close down OBS or OBS crashes, then there's no way for you to recover. I'm so sorry. Then there's no way for you to recover the file or like the context of the file. If you use a different format, then there's a way to recover parts of the recording, but the file format is really bad. MP4 is better, and let's be honest, unless you totally fuck up and press Alt F4 on OBS, it won't close on you. Like, it just won't. CBR for control rate. Again, choose a bitrate here. Key interval, the same thing as before, basically. Audio, I just recommend putting 192. 192 is like a default audio bitrate for most 1080p recordings that you find on YouTube and shit. Even though YouTube uses a different codec to make sure that the audio is great, by default it's 160, which is just not good. Okay, let's move to audio. I would put it on 48, but that's just preference. I personally use headphones with 320 bitrate. I mean hertz, so I just use this. Stereo or whatever you use. You just choose your microphone source and your audio source. So if you leave them on default, it'll just choose whatever you have on Windows set to your microphone and stuff. You can also set up push to mute, push to talk and stuff. I don't really recommend using these, like there's no reason to. So yeah, video. I can't really show you much of this while recording, unfortunately, but it shows you the base canvas size of your recording, which is gonna decide how big this, how big this window is. Let me mute the system sounds. Okay. So base canvas just decides how big this is, the red outline here. Output scaled resolution means you can rescale from this resolution to another resolution. You can set this to either 1080p or whatever your monitor size is, and then you can set it to a lower one like 720p. You can't put custom ones here, but what you can do is actually Oh, I'm sorry. You can actually choose the custom resolution here. You just can't choose it here, right? And then you have different filters. There is by cubic. There is by something else above that. I don't recommend using it unless you have really bad performance and you want better performance, but then you can't rescale your resolution or it'll be very blurry. So I recommend using by cubic if you can, because it scales and it doesn't matter. And then here under common FPS values, you can just choose your FPS. I don't recommend going lower than 30 because for recordings and also streams, most people won't watch anything below 30 unless there's like a specific reason for you to do that. Don't be one of these like movie freaks who think that you only need 24 FPS for the eye to see whatever. By the way, it's a myth that the eye only sees 24 FPS. The eye can see very well up to above 200 FPS on a screen in hertz. The difference is very minimal, but you can actually see that much of a difference. So yeah, this is that. Hotkeys. Pretty self-explanatory. You can just set hotkeys to your keys and then do stuff like, I don't know, show Photoshop, show TF2. Oh yeah, that's what we're gonna get to in a moment. So you can mute, unmute, push to talk, whatever. Now, there's a few things you want to be aware of in this one. If you notice that you get a lot of stuttering or like a bad performance on the recording, but your in-game looks totally fine, that's because of this setting. This basically decides how much OBS is gonna use up of your performance. So you can make it that it's pretty much not gonna use anything. That way whatever you're doing is gonna be fine. Like you won't have a decrease in any performance at whatsoever. If you put it to above normal, that's when it usually starts taking like enough performance to be noticeable. I use above normal because if I don't, it's just a frozen frame in most cases. So yeah, I use that to make sure it still records properly. You can use high if you have a better PC or you're not doing anything special in recording that takes a lot of performance away. Video rendering, right? You want to use Direct 3D if you can. You want to use NVENC 12 if you can, which I think is just the 12th generation of NVIDIA graphics. For the color space settings, which some people may have seen on display settings before, is basically the spectrum of black to white and everything in between. There's two ways to set these. I'm using partial with 601. There's a 700 something and a full setting here. The reason I don't use the full one is because I have filters that make my stuff look brighter than it is, even though I have this setting on. If I turn this to full and this to 700 something, then all the blacks and all the darker colors look very bad on my PC. I tried fixing it. I think it has to do with how much vibrance I use on my display, which I don't want to change because it's just my preference. So yeah, if you don't have that, you can probably use the full spectrum of colors. Just enable that. It'll make whites whiter and blacks blacker. Darker, I mean. You can ignore all of these. This is just some custom settings if you do want your file name to look different. Stream delay, you can customary set a delay between you. Say you're playing League of Legends and you don't want to get stream sniped, you can just set a delay. You can set it to automatically reconnect if it happens to disconnect if you're streaming. So yeah, there's that. Those are basically all the settings, like the main settings. So if you're done with that and you figured out a way to set them without taking too much performance off of what you're doing to make it comfortable, right? Then you wanna start putting in scenes. So what you do is you press right click on this and you add a new scene. You can name this whatever you want. It'll create one of these new tabs. You see these tabs? Yeah, if you click them, it swaps to them, by the way. And each tab is gonna have different sources. I have a lot of sources, as you can see. But what I'm gonna do is make a new source right here. I know it's black now. Give it a moment. Okay. So you notice it's a lot bigger because I do use a smaller resolution than my desktop. So what I just did is I right clicked in sources, which was empty, and then I went to add, and now you have an option menu to add new things that you want to add to your... Oh my god, I can't talk. Let me just turn this down a bit. Okay. Basically, you click on add, and now you can choose all kinds of different input methods that you want to display or have in your stream or your video. So the most important ones for gaming, I guess, are game capture, which will bring up this menu. In this menu, which I'm gonna make bigger, you can pick a name for the source of what you're gonna capture. That way you can keep track of different game names and stuff. You can also add ones that you previously made. Since you don't have any at this point, you're just gonna use create new one. And you just put in some name. And then it's gonna bring up this window. Now, the main usage of this setting, like this scene that we just, the gaming scene, game capture, the main usage is full screen programming, programs. So full screen applications, anything that has an executable and goes full screen can be used in this instance. It also works with borderless windowed mode, but I recommend using full screen anyway, unless you really want to tab out at the same time as seeing the game, which will make your performance worse though. You can pick your game by going specific window and then choosing a window from here. It'll show the name of your game in this tab. If it doesn't, then you're doing something wrong. You can also just leave it on any full screen application. That way it will automatically pick a full screen application that's on the foreground. So like if you tap into it, it'll capture it. If you tap into another one, it'll capture that. You can also set it to this with a hotkey. So yeah, I just use specific and then pick a game because that's very good. You can also choose stuff like this. So like say the executable corrupts or something and the name changes, then it'll find a window of the same type. Or if you have multiple open, it'll just go to a different one. SLI crossfire capture mode. I recommend you looking this up and learning what it does. I'm not gonna talk about it in this video, but basically crossfire is a feature from AMD. If you happen to have an AMD setup, then I recommend maybe looking into this and maybe using it. You can, you don't have to. You can just leave it off. For scaling, again, you can make the resolution bigger or smaller. Allow transparency means you can literally make the game look transparent and have something behind the game that is visible, like another image or your face or whatever, or like a capture cam, a video cam or whatever. You can limit the frame rate of the game, which is really weird. I don't know why you would do that, because yeah, you can make sure the capture is cursored. The cursor is captured. So in full screen games, you usually have a custom cursor. It'll display a custom cursor, that's for sure. But if you want to see your normal cursor in games where they don't have a custom cursor, you leave this on. If you don't want to see the cursor for some reason, then you can turn this off and the cursor just disappears. There's also use anti-cheat compatibility hook. I usually turn this off. I'm not sure what it does. I don't think it's that important. Again, pretty self-explanatory. It even explains if you use third-party overlays such as Discord in-game, like if you're in-game and there's a Discord overlay for that game, so you can see like your call in the game, you can activate this. Or for Steam, if you're in a Steam game, you can press tab and shift. Tap and shift, it'll open up a overlay. With this, you can enable seeing that on your stream. If you click OK, it'll be here in your scene source. Hey, you did it. Nice. So now you can click on this lower arrow to make it invisible. I'm gonna demonstrate what happens if I do this to my display capture. Oh, it's gone. Oh, it's back again. So yeah, you can use these to make sources invisible. You can do this to make sure it's not like moved around or deleted on accident. Now you can also remove it or rename it here. You can change the order in which it appears. You can turn it by 90 degrees or whatever. You can do all this stuff. Isn't it great? Hold on, let me just flip back to, oh yeah, Control Z will not do that. Okay. That's interesting, I didn't know. There you go. I flipped 180% degree. Yeah, so you can flip stuff here. You can also flip it horizontal and vertical. I don't know why you would ever do that. Now, you can increase the filters here instead of on the other page in your settings. I don't know why you would do that. Maybe you want different filters for different sources. Like if you don't care about how blurry your webcam looks like, then you can turn it down here and then turn it up for the game or whatever. Filters, which is something you could use, which is something I use, is where you can add stuff like color correction, where you can use stuff like chroma key and loot and a keypad and stuff like blending, render, scaling, whatever, aspect ratio. I recommend just try these out. If you have any experience with using Photoshop and the likes of those programs, you probably know what half of these are. If you don't, just look them up. So yeah, you can add filters to your scene. You can see the properties, but there's like no reason to other than disabling capture cursor. So what else is important? You need maybe you need like a display capture, which is here. It's pretty self-explanatory again. Image. It'll open up this menu in which you just pick an image if you press OK. And then you go on browse, and then it'll open up your browser and you just pick an image. Oh yeah, I should probably do that to demonstrate some other things. Let me just pick an image really quick. So say I wanted to pick my latest profile picture, the one I used most recently. There you go. Now it's really big in my screen. I can make it smaller, and now comes important parts. So you see this red outline? You can hold the edge and drag it to make it smaller. Now it's smaller, right? You can also, I should probably leave this though. You can let me think. Oh yeah. You can, for example, just do this. You can hold down Control to scale it like this. Wait, no, that's not what I meant. Oh yeah. So if you hold down Shift, it'll do this. So you can change the aspect ratio of it. Same goes for those. So if you hold down Alt, which is a really important feature that not a lot of people use, is if you hold down Alt, it'll turn green, right? Because you can delete parts of the image like this and just cut out parts of the image that you want. This is a really useful feature, and I'm really glad that they kept this in OBS. So yeah, I really enjoy using this feature. You can basically just, and now also if you want to go back to just using it normally, you just don't hold Alt and you just do this. Okay, I'm just gonna put this here and have it like a little webcam, right? So that's that. That's how you add a picture. You can use this to add a GIF as well if you wanted to, or make a slideshow. How if you really wanted to like have multiple images after another, say like an advertisement or whatever. Most of these are pretty, like you can just look them up or it says what it is. Text is probably something you want to use. You just add text and there's a few options. So that's where you add the text. I misspelled that. Okay. That's where you add the text, and then you can change the font if you click on this. It'll bring up a few more options than just the font. For example, the font style, the font size, the font itself you can choose here. If you have custom fonts installed, that's why it looks like there's so many. You can add strikeout and stuff, effects. It'll show up here, and then underline, and yeah, you can use these and stuff like that. I'm just not gonna bother using any of that and just use this font at this size and press OK. Now it's this font, A. We did something. We can also, if you scroll down, see some other settings like select color. Make it like green, sure. Just click OK. Now it's green. You can change the opacity, make it transparent if you really want to. You can make a gradient, you can choose a background color, etc, etc, etc. You can choose where it is. If you don't want to move it there yourself, you can make an outline. Make the outline black. Oh, so many options. So many options. So yeah. Then you press OK, you see it showed up on the screen. You can move it around just like an image or whatever. You can make it bigger by moving. I recommend just putting a bigger font size than instead of doing this, because it'll get blurry. Maybe you can see if I do it like this, it'll look pixely. So just leave it small and make the font size bigger. It's a better option. Again, you can also make it invisible, reappear, you can lock the scene, you can rename the scene, you can even add filters, which I don't know why you would ever do that on text, but yeah. Also, what did we cover? Game, image, browser. Basically you put in a URL, it'll just be like a browser image. You can also interact with the browser, which is really nice. You can add a scene from a different layout. For example, say I wanted my streaming in 2019 scene to be inside of this. So now it's in here. Isn't it great? I can just click this button and it appears and disappears just like that. Great, isn't it? Not gonna keep this though. So you can add a video. Okay, sorry for that. I'm gonna do this video in one take because fuck that. Fuck cutting this video. So yeah. Yeah, what was I talking about? Yeah. You can add scenes, right? You can add a video source if you want a video to play in your stream. You can add a video capture device, which will be your webcam for the most part. I recommend just looking up how to use this. You can add a window capture, which is the most used apart from gaming, which is just any window that you want to capture. Say you want to capture this window, right? This window. You just select it, if you can find it. It's hard to find. I think it's this. Nope, that's not it. Okay, let's just use another example of a program like Discord. I don't want to show too much of my Discord. I'm just gonna go into my server because that's public, right? So let me choose Discord. I can't find Discord. That's so odd. Okay, let me choose something else then, like Chrome. So yeah, I want to capture Chrome. Go to properties, that's where you can change stuff again. Oh, now it shows up, yeah. So I can use it to capture Chrome. By the way, this doesn't work if you have hardware acceleration on Chrome enabled. To disable that, you can either look up a guide and be smart, or if you're lazy, you can just click on settings. I'm so sorry, I just noticed that. So I'm gonna remove this real quick. Okay, so if you're on Chrome, why would you use Firefox, right? You go on this button, then you go on settings, then you scroll down, go to advanced, then you scroll down again until you find this, use hardware acceleration when available. Turn this off, restart Chrome, and you will be able to capture Chrome as a window. You can capture most windows that way. I'm not gonna demonstrate it because it's pretty self-explanatory, but yeah, you're gonna have something that looks like this just for a single window instead of your entire display. It's really useful if you don't want to show all the things that are going on your stream, just a certain section, like chat, for example, if you want to put chat there. There's better ways to do that, but that's a good way. Now, that's pretty much all the sources you can add. Now, one thing I think a lot of people ignore exists is this section, the audio management. I'm gonna make this really big, like this, right? So basically, you have desktop audio and you have mic/aux on default. You can add more sources if you can add them here under audio. So there's a mute button that'll just mute you. It'll mute you. There's settings, which we'll get to. You can increase and decrease the volume of that, and you can see a green bar that shows the active volume with a little number. For the most part, I think if you record something where you talk, or if you stream, you want to make the volume of whatever content you're watching or whatever quieter than your voice, because people tend to make the music or whatever they have a lot louder than their actual voice, so they are really hard to understand. It's really annoying. So make sure it's louder than whatever you're watching or listening to. If you don't want to record your voice at all, you can either disable your microphone or this button. Okay, so filters. There's something called filters. This is where you add noise suppression. Say you have a really loud background, like your computer is really loud. This is where you can add noise suppression, so it won't activate your microphone until a certain level is reached. I set it to -7 because my PC is really loud. There's also gain. Let's say your microphone is quiet and you want to make it louder. This is where you do this. Right? You can do the same for here. There's other filters, but I don't really I didn't really use any of them until now, so yeah. I'm not an expert on that. So there's other things you can do on this site other than start and stop recording and streaming. There is also studio mode, which won't do this. It's just a way to like transition between two windows. You know those DJ pads where they have two discs at the same time, and they can, you know, like play the one and then they listen over the headphones to the other and then they transition it. You can do this here with the help of these tools as well. There's a fade over and stuff. I don't use it. I just use this instead. This is where you enter your settings and stuff. Yeah. Start, stop recording. You can add more image like windows if you drag and drop and like add more, which you do up here if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So you can add more tools and stuff. This is where you can add more scenes and like profiles. For example, if you record different kind of things and they require different kinds of performance settings and you don't want to set them each time, you can just make a profile or collection or whatever under new profile, and it'll make a new one where you can have different settings and different stuff, and then you can go back and forth between those. They're under here, by the way, profile. Now there's like stuff you can just look for, but basically a few things you can see that may be useful are this stats, where it shows your CPU usage and everything. Basically things that are very self-explanatory. You can access the settings through here if you don't have that option here. So yeah, I think this is all that matters. Again, if we look at this, remember that depending on how much performance you want over looks or vice versa, you're gonna have to adjust mainly this number and your resolution, obviously, and your FPS in some cases, but I would really avoid using the lowest filter on this. And if you notice that your CPU is like having a really hard time, you could put this on normal. But it may be that if you put it on normal and the game is too high of a, say it's like a AAA title, like The Witcher or whatever, I think if you put it on normal and your PC is not good enough, it'll just be a still frame instead of a video. So keep that in mind. Again, this is a lot of trial and error until it's right. But yeah. Alright, I think that wraps up all of the things I wanted to cover and go over. I hope you'll have fun figuring out how to stream or record videos and have fun doing that. I personally have not been enjoying it too much, but I do enjoy making those kind of videos that I'm sometimes interested in doing for people who just need it and may have trouble finding a good one on YouTube because most of them are either with very loud dubstep music or done by 8-year-olds that can't even speak their only language properly. And yeah, there's a few ones that are better, but sometimes they're also outdated. Again, this is for February the 3rd, 2020, so pretty active, yeah, by the time I record this, I think this is like one of the most recent videos you'll find. So yeah, this is the end. Yep.